Hello everybody, welcome to the IK Multimedia booth. We're going to do a little demo of Hammond B-3X. Please say hello to the incredible Brian Charette. Let's just start the demo the best way and just listen to the organ a little bit. Right on, Brian. Excellent. Yes. So Hammond B-3X is a modeled virtual instrument that we designed in close cooperation with the Hammond Organ Company in Chicago and Suzuki Musical Instruments in Japan. We really approached it as a player's instrument. And when I go through the architecture of it, you'll start to understand what I mean by all of that. So the top level of the instrument is this organ page here that looks like a Hammond B3 with the upper manual, the lower manual, and the pedals. And these all respond to their own MIDI channel. And we, of course, have the drawbar preset inverted keys on the left, just like you have on the classic hardware Hammond B3. And, of course, all the percussion switches and chorus vibrato, expression pedal, the half moon Leslie switch, all of the Hammond things that you're expecting to see. All of these are controllable by MIDI continuous controller, so you can use any controller you like. It doesn't have to be a Hammond controller. It can be one of our IK controllers or anything you want. Yamaha controller, Studio Logic controller, whatever you want. You can map that to these controls. So the basic architecture of the instrument is we have the organ tab, and then the organ goes into a stomp pedal board. So a 5-effect pedal board with an overdrive effect here, then a graphic EQ, which is modeled after the API graphic EQ, then a model of the classic Boss, Roland Boss CE1 chorus vibrato. Then we have a spring reverb, and then a wah-wah pedal. This is all out of the organ before the Leslie. So imagine if you had a pedal board between the organ and the Leslie, which obviously a lot of players do that kind of thing. So we go out of the pedal board into our cabinet section. And the cabinet section is based on our Amplitude Leslie software that we released 2 years ago. And we modeled not only the Leslie 122 that you see here, but we actually modeled several different amps and several different cabinets. So like Amplitude Leslie, you can use the amp from a 122, and you can use the cabinet of like the new 3300W, for example. Let me get that right. There we go. So you can mix and match the amps, which gives you a tremendous amount of tonal flexibility. We took it even a step further than Amplitude. So you can have like the 122 cabinet, but then we actually let you use a guitar amp for the amp in the Leslie, which a lot of rock players and blues players use. So if you really want like a, a dirty, crunchy sound, I can pull it back a little bit. Awesome, excellent. So in addition to that, we give you control over the EQ of the Leslie cabinet itself. So this is like EQing the mics that are on the amp. Then you can, of course, do the EQ of the Leslie amp. So we give you two sets of EQs, one for the actual amp control, like the EQ on a guitar amp, basically, and then the Leslie EQ of the mics, which is the stereo mix of everything that's coming out. So in parallel with the Leslie, we have a guitar amp. And again, this is like something for rock and blues players. We have the British lead, which is modeled after the Marshall Plexi, and then the high amp, which is modeled after the Hiwatt 100. And this is parallel with the Leslie. So you can dial in, like, even if you want just a clean guitar amp, but better, like a distorted, more aggressive guitar amp sound. So if you want to dial in like a John Lord sound or Rod Argent or Keith Emerson or any of that kind of thing, you can do that in parallel. Let's see what we have here. There we go, excellent, well done. And then at the end of it, we have a mixer. So we can mix the balance between the drum, which is the lower rotating speaker, the horn, which is the upper rotating speaker, and then a balance between the Leslie cabinet and the guitar cabinet. And then we can also mix in the DI. And there are a lot of players, especially like contemporary jazz players, I don't want to drop names, but some famous contemporary jazz players that like to mix in the DI that's just a line out of the organ in parallel with the Leslie and the guitar amp. So we give you the flexibility to do all of that stuff. And then finally, it goes into a post-effects section. And we have, this is basically like, okay, now your stereo organ signal has come into the studio, and now we have a FET limiter based on the URI 1176, which is stereo, of course, then into a channel strip based on the Neve 1081, and then into an algorithmic digital reverb. So we have the spring reverb that's before the Leslie. So if you want the reverb to spin around in the Leslie, we can do that. And then if you want to put reverb on the mix post Leslie, you can use this algorithmic digital reverb at the end. So we give you just a tremendous amount of flexibility to dial in exactly the kind of Hammond B3 sound you're after. Everything I just mentioned can be stored as a preset. And so we have, as you'd expect, a long list of presets, everything from to jazz, to rock, to blues, to gospel, all that kind of stuff. So, like, let me just pull up, well, here's a gospel one. Let's hear a little bit of this, Brian. Should we bring it down a little bit? Oh, you have to turn it on again, because I changed presets, sorry. Yes, the split button. So nothing's live anymore because I changed presets. So anything you want to do with the drawbars, you'll have to dial that in again. I should have warned you. Awesome, excellent. Well done. So we can actually go even further. We give you some advanced controls, and this lets you dial in different qualities of the organ. First of all, you can choose between four models of four different organs that we studied, and these are all like, super pristine, awesome Hammond organs that we measured and used as the basis for these these 4 presets in here. So you can like start with those, and each one of those has their own character. Then we have a tonal balance. So the way a Hammond organ works is you have 91 free-running tone wheels, and those are mixed together depending on the drawbars you have out and depending on the note you play. So the tonal balance will emphasize the higher frequencies, the higher pitched tone wheels versus the lower pitched tone wheels. So it is a brightness control, but it's not a brightness control like a treble or a treble or bass. It's actually changing the balance of the high frequencies versus the low frequencies. And on so many different Hammond organs, as these things age, the balance changes. So this is going to let you dial in exactly the style and the sound you want. If it's sounding a little bit strident to you, you can pull it back. If it's sounding a little bit dull, you can turn this up and compensate. Then we have our generator leakage, typical control you find on Hammond virtual instruments, of course. So this lets you dial in the amount of leakage from the other tone wheels. Like if you're playing middle C, okay, well the adjacent tone wheels to that are going to leak a little bit, and that's just it's a big part of the Hammond organ sound, of course. And depending on what you're going for, you can dial in and make it a little more dirty. If you want something a little more aggressive, or if you want something super clean, you can dial that back. We also give you control over key click, both key click on and key click off, so for the release note. Then the key click color, and this is basically the brightness or darkness of the click. So we give you actually 3 controls for key click, so we're going super deep on this. Then we give you a percussion volume trim. This lets you trim the overall level of the percussion. This is separate from the normal Hammond B3, percussion soft and percussion normal. This lets you set the balance between it. We give you a common mod on Hammond B3s, which is percussion volume compensation. Normally when you turn on percussion, the volume of the regular tone wheels drops by, I think it's 3 or 4 dB, which makes the percussion come out more clear. Okay, well, a lot of players, especially like pop and rock players, don't like that. They just want to add percussion and not have the level of the drawbars drop. So a lot of hardware Hammond B3s have been modded for this volume compensation so that when you turn on the percussion, it stays the same. So we recreated that mod in Hammond B-3X that you can turn on or off. Then we give you a master level over the decay time of the percussion. And again, this is separate from the classic, the rocker switch fast and slow that you have. This is an overall way to trim that as well. And of course, that changes as time goes on a lot of classic Hammonds. And then lastly, for the chorus vibrato, when you turn on the chorus, it's summing the dry signal with the vibrato scanner on a classic Hammond, and you naturally get a high frequency presence boost when that happens. And that can vary from organ to organ, and a lot of players are very particular about this. Like you want, okay, well that's too bright, no, I need it to be a lot more bright, so we give you control over that kind of thing. And then we give you an actual mix control for the chorus. It's supposed to be just a 50-50 mix between dry and the vibrato scanner, but again, with vintage electronics, especially old transistors, tubes, and all that, it changes over time. And so there are certain B3s that have sort of aged into a sweet spot that players really like it this way, We give you that kind of control. So this advanced panel is just full of all of these micro, super fussy controls that let you like dial in the Hammond organ of your dreams. Like this is exactly the way I want it. And we've sat with so many original hardware B3s from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and just A-B'd them like, oh yeah, this one, the chorus is a little more pronounced on this one, and okay, yeah, the decay is a little longer on this one. And that's why we set up this panel, because this basically will let you match any classic Hammond that you find. So if you are going after a very, very specific sound, you can dial it in this way. And if all of this is just super boring and super nerdy and you just want to play organ, you don't need to open this and look at it at all. So let's go back to, I'll tell you what. Go ahead and, Brian, just go ahead and set the drawbars any way you want. Oh, I should say one more thing before I turn it over to Brian, and then I'll shut up and we can just listen to Brian play. I mentioned that everything is MIDI controllable. So we have some preset profiles for the Hammond Suzuki keyboards. We have a Hammond XK5 up here now, and we have a profile for that. And when you select that profile, all of the controls on that Hammond XK5 will automatically control Hammond B-3X, so you don't have to do any mapping. We also have that available for the SK series, so the SK1, SK2, SKX, and then the older XK3 and XK3C. Those are like no longer current models, but there's so many of them out in the world, we just thought it was important to include those as well. Now let's say you have something else. Let's say you have, I don't know, a Yamaha montage or something, and you want to use that. Well, we give you every single parameter here in this MIDI controllers list, and you can assign that to the controller of your choice. And if you right-click on this, you can do MIDI learn. So I just right-click, select learn, and then you move the controller on your keyboard, and it learns that control. So when I say that this is developed from a player's perspective, we really are giving you just any kind of control you could possibly want. You can save all of this as a preset, of course, and with preset you can go from Jimmy Smith jazz to John Lord rock to Steve Winwood R&B or Brian Charette awesomeness just by selecting a preset. So speaking of Brian Charette awesomeness, why don't you go ahead and just set the drawbars back, all the controls back the way you want, and I'll have you play us out, as they say. Right on, Brian Charette. Before we wrap it up.